Trent, obviously the 8 weeks, do you cop that sweet? Is it acceptable?
Yeah, it is. You know, I don't. It was, you know, obviously a different one, and to put a figure on it, I think it's been difficult. I think a lot of people have talked about those figures, about what it could and couldn't have been. But that was the ruling, and you cop the 8 weeks and you move on. You know, there's not much use debating on weeks. I think it's a bit of a bigger issue than that.
The club's copped a fair bit. Tell us about the club you know.
Yeah, it's been obviously really difficult over the last 9 days. Just sort of understanding, you know, it's had a big social impact on, you know, the sporting world of sort of rugby league, and it's obviously had an effect on here. We've been able to have some really important conversations in here. We're really proud of the club that we are, and we know who we are and the things that we support, but there's no doubt it's been a tough week and a half dealing with this issue.
How is Ezra? How is Spencer? I beg your pardon.
Yeah, it's obviously been a life-changing moment for him as well, you know, in that, and it's sort of been quite a humbling week for him. He's been really respectful in the whole time and really honest, and he's at no point has he sort of questioned the punishment or anything like that. He's just, yeah, it's a time for him to move on and improve as well.
You made a stand against a racism incident that occurred last season from a fan in a Roosters jersey. I don't want to ambush you with this, but is there any sort of regrets from the coach that you said Ezra is adamant, but that doesn't mean it's right? Is that just phrasing that you've got wrong in a post-match press conference?
Yeah, look, the context of that at the time, I should have handled that differently. Really think that. But we didn't have any comms of the incident. Nothing in the stadium over there. There was no mic, and I went into that press conference unsure of what happened on the field, and I felt like people had already found him guilty, and I just wanted to sort of say, look, there's obviously a procedure here, but the words I used were wrong on that, definitely.
Trent, you just touched on it then. It's quite uncommon for an active case to hear a lot of players, even coaches, talking about the Spencer case before the verdict. They've already been pleaded guilty to it. Do you think that's a learning point for the NRL, and then do you think it needs to change?
This is a really tough one, right? So what was on trial was really, this wasn't a high tackle. You know, it was very different. So this had a big impact on society and all of society. And what was on trial here wasn't our game of sport, it was more language, and racism was on trial. And so I don't have any problem with people talking out about something when it's really strong for them. Obviously when it crossed the line into making judgments on what should happen from the NRL, that's for the NRL to deal with, you know, and they'll either do something about it, or they've allowed those rules to be pushed out, and now we all can do very similar things when it comes to judgment before a hearing. So that on that, but when it comes to obviously the incident, you know, my point on it is, if anybody thinks Spencer is racist, a guy that's, if we understand the definition of racism, it's when you try and put someone, use power or use your power to put someone down a class and degrade that person. If you think that an immigrant from parents from Samoa and then obviously from New Zealand and in Mount Druitt and growing up and he's trying to put someone down through power, then we're way off the mark.
The NRL implied it though. They were saying it, and they didn't believe that he didn't know the Adam Goodes story. I mean, do you find that frustrating?
Look, I think my point is that he is not racist. His use of language for me was on trial. You know, if you think that this is a football issue, if anybody can stand atop their mountain and look down on people and judge them for the way that they talk in society, then, you know, a lot of people are doing that, and that's where I have an issue. This is a language issue. This is a common talk between people of often all ages, but from a very young age. In sport, in the playground, right through to people in their 20s and 30s use this language often. And it's not because they're racist or they're trying to put power there, it's banter between guys. And I'm not saying it's right. This is what's on trial. We need to change the language at which we speak to each other. To call Spencer a racist is, it's so far from the truth. It is so far from the truth. But is that language right? You can never use that. But is that happening on a daily basis? It is, and that's, and so I'm not, for me, I'm not here trying to judge anybody that had an opinion. The thing is I think you will want sort of a bit of fireworks from me to make sure that it keeps going. But the point is what's going to come out of this? This needs to be a changing moment for language and the way that people of the same class and the same community use this language, and that can't happen. We had different language we used 20, 30 years ago that we wouldn't even speak now, and this needs to go there. So anybody calling out Spencer, I understand it, he should not have used it, and he's going to live with that for the rest of his life, but many people use this language, and that needs to be the positive out of it, that everybody takes a check on the way that they speak to each other and the way that we change the way it looks in society. This isn't an NRL problem.
It sounds like you may have told the players that, or maybe you've addressed them and said this has to change.
Yeah, we've had to have a couple of conversations about it, and it's been great. How do you talk to each other? Okay, what do you think about the way that you talk to each other? How do you think you talk to people on the field, in the change room, in the workplace? All of that. We didn't have to talk about whether Spencer was racist or not. That was not that. People can make judgment from afar, but spending time with him, you're not making that comment from the way that his life has been lived. That's not the case. Is he guilty of using language he shouldn't? Definitely. And that's going to cost dearly for a long time. But we can keep the back and forth and the fight going, or we can go, okay, well, what's going to improve out of this? How do we improve that? And we can try and do that within these walls. We need to. And so does society.
But you can't phase it out of society though, Trent. But are you hopeful that you can phase it out of your group? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think this is a big enough, I think a lot of people have rightly stood up for their culture and made a point of it. And I think, it's really tough watching Chock and Trell go at each other. It's really like two legend sporting people in our country that have led the way for everybody in sport, having argument around the use of this language, whereas we need to be led by those guys about what does language look like, how should we speak, how can it be better. It's sad to see those guys having a go at each other when you want to be led by those guys in which direction do we go.
I just wanted to go back because you said that this sort of language is happening on a daily basis and it's not okay, and that we maybe need to review, or the players need to review how they talk on field. We had Hamole Alaquatu come out yesterday and said that he'd been called names on the field and it was quite common. Is this something that the game needs to look at, that it's not just one incident, maybe there's lots of little incidents happening that need to be changed? Yeah,
that's not for me to speak of on field, but it's, it is more common than what people think, and it's not because people are racist. Let's hope in 10 or 20 years' time we look back and that we've seen that as racist language. At the moment it's banter for those guys, and that's the shift. It's not pointing fingers. I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody. I think, and it's not on the NRL field. It's in the playground. It's in the under 16s or 17s training sessions. It's common and it's playful. It's between mates. Sometimes it's been between people that have had an argument. But the goalposts have changed on who can say that and direct it towards and for the better. And so we can keep this going day on day, or we can get okay, well, what does this mean? Someone give us some direction about moving forward and educate everybody more directly on what's acceptable and what's not, and then we'll be in a positive place in a year's time.
Can I ask, you've obviously got a couple of Indigenous guys, you've obviously got Dominic Young, West Indian background. How are they feeling? Because I take your point that Spencer may not necessarily be a racist, but the language used has obviously a strong history to it. Like,
Yep.
what conversations do you have with them to kind of? Because I imagine that might stick with them for a while if they heard a teammate use that kind of language.
No, that hasn't been the feedback. Obviously, that feedback's private, but everyone's had their chance to have their say, and we've discussed that with those guys. And their points of view and the way they use it, and we had to have a pretty open forum on that. I'm not going to go into details about what was said, but it was a step in the right direction for us.
How's this going to, for football terms, how's it going to impact what your team does this week, next week, going forward?
It is. We spoke about that as well. We're proud of this club. We're proud of the jersey that we represent, and we'll be putting that on and playing strong from Sunday. We're going to play with an energy that we want to bring to the game, and we want to have a positive impact for our jersey and also our supporters.
JWH back.
Yeah.
From a football point of view, and given what you've discussed behind closed doors, is he the type of bloke who can galvanise the team?
Yeah, it's important to have men like that come back in and stand and say, let's go. There's this hasn't been what we've wanted, and it hasn't been a great week, but in the end our job is to go out there and represent on Sunday again, and to have guys that have experienced lots of different things in their life to go in and go, okay, let's play football. It's really important, and there's been no better man in the in a long time for the Roosters than Jared for us to stand behind.
How important is it getting Dom Young back, not just for the team but for himself? Like, he dealt with the health issues over in the UK, and then obviously the neck issue. How has he been the past few months, and how excited is he to finally get back on the field?
Yeah, it's great, because it's really interesting when you get a guy coming in for the first time. Beautiful player to watch train and move, and then you watch him sort of develop into the squad. I was worried we weren't going to take him to Las Vegas and LA because of the injury. When that got ticked off, that was a big jump again about him sort of becoming a Rooster more and more. And so that was a really important point for us to bond a bit more with the team. Now it's time to let him fly. I'm looking forward to watching him play. He moves well.
You talk about flying. I think it is the tallest backline probably ever assembled. Do you talk to your halves? Like, do you almost deviate from the game plan and say, just kick to these guys?
Haven't mentioned a word about it. That might be a part of our game plan from the start. So I don't know we need to deviate. We know the height that we've got, and we've got to take advantage of that.
Just on Jared as well, obviously you announced that he's going to leave at the end of the year.
Good,
You
yeah.
Good? Is
No.
that a good thing? I would say it's not. I think front row in the comp probably thinks that's a good thing. But for you guys, like, for a guy who's led the way so much in just physicality, raw emotion, like, is Lindsay going to start to become that guy? Do you feel for you moving forward? It feels like last year was a real turning point for Lindsay.
There's two parts. I think obviously Lindsay's taken over as the leader, the skill leader, as far as the way that you play front row. That he's irreplaceable when it comes to the spiritual leader that he is, and that needs to be shared around the squad, and someone needs to fill it. It doesn't get filled until those guys leave, so that's an important step for our squad. But it's a really nice way for him to make that decision at the start of the year. Still have gas in the legs to play front row and play another year, and I'm going to enjoy every moment, of Jazz for this year.
Sorry, lastly I wanted to ask.
All right, Billy.
Max Jorgensen is being linked to the club.
Yep.
Is he someone that you're interested in? Is he someone that you want at the Roosters?
Jorgo's, I've known him since he was a kid. Great mates with his dad, so that's, we had him training here obviously a while ago. There's always a sort of door open for that at some point, but that hasn't been discussed as far as, from the last time we tried to sign him there. So, the door's always open there for Jorgo at some point. But there's no pressure there or whatever. When that time comes, we need to speak probably a fair while in advance to get that organised, knowing how good he's going to be.